This happened back when I was in middle school. Technically, it was actually my last day in middle school. It was late May, and for our last day, our school would do a sort of field day where the whole school would play a bunch of games to celebrate the end of the school year. Now, back then, I used to be a pretty active kid, but unfortunately, due to a recent concussion, I was unable to participate in any games the whole day. I was pretty disappointed, yeah, though I did bring my DS and quickly opted to just sit inside one of the classrooms and play that, as, there wasn't really anything else I could do. None of the teachers seemed to mind, so there I was, all by myself in the classroom for my science class playing my DS, all the while the other kids got to play games in the school's gymnasium. It was a weird feeling being in that classroom alone. I don't really know how to explain it. Up until that point, I don't think I'd ever been in a classroom completely alone. Something that needs to be mentioned is that the teachers that weren't watching the kids in the gymnasium were in a room across the hall having meetings. I'd say I was playing on my DS for not even an hour, when my English teacher, Miss Allen, rushed up to the classroom's door and closed it from the outside. She didn't say anything to me, so I figured she just wanted to make sure I couldn't hear whatever the teachers were talking about across the hall. Forgetting about it, I went back to playing my DS. A couple minutes later, the classroom's door swung open. I expected to see one of the teachers coming in to check on me, but no, a man I'd never seen before walked into the room and closed the door behind him. The guy had to have at least been in his 50s, and so I just assumed it was some kid's dad. It wasn't unusual for parents to come into the school to bring a student their lunch, so I asked if he was looking for someone. He replied with no, in a tone that seemed almost offended that I would even ask that question. Before I could say anything else, the guy started walking towards me. I asked him what he was doing, and that's when he lifted up his shirt, revealing a handgun on his waistband. He followed it up by saying, "Look kid, I'm gonna need you to come with me, or I'm gonna kill you." The guy said it in the most carefree tone I had ever heard. And that, along with the fact that I'd never even seen a gun in person before, instantly overwhelmed me with pure fear. Before I could fully comprehend the danger of the situation I was in, the guy firmly grabbed my wrist and started pulling me towards the classroom door. But before we got into the hallway, the deafening sound of our school's lockdown alarm started going off. This was followed by the guy instantly letting go of my wrist and making a run for it down the hall and through a back exit. I stood there in shock for a second, but ultimately went back inside the classroom. I'm not sure how much time had passed when Miss Allen came back into the room and told me that she didn't want to scare me, but that there had been an intruder inside the building and a lockdown which now was over had taken place. I would tell her about the man, and instantly she brought me to a police officer who was already on the premises to explain what I had experienced. It turns out the man was the whole reason the school went into lockdown in the first place. The man was reported to have been scoping out the school all morning, and when he was seen getting close to the building itself, someone would call the police, which resulted in the lockdown. The guy was later caught, and would openly admit that he had been trying to scare kids into getting into his car so he could kidnap them. And this reality still horrifies me to this day. Not a day goes by where I'm not thankful for the school's alarm going off when it did.